So I talked about this a little bit last week, and I wanted to deep dive this more because I think what's going on here is going to be much bigger than just peace. And so this is what um, I came up with this today. I did a bunch of research and then working with AI, ChatGPT, I put together a report today on what would happen if Putin and Trump met and they create an economic alliance as well as a peace alliance. Now, I've been saying for a while that I think what Trump is putting together could end up being an economic miracle that could save us from the economic downturn that we should have based on the fundamentals of our economy. Um, and I think this might be part of it. In fact, I think this is going to yield much bigger results than we could imagine. So I don't know how many of you know this, but the Russian-Ukraine war affected the global economy much more than anybody admits or talks about. And the reason why is because all the resources in those regions is massive. Ukraine is like the breadbasket of Europe. So a bunch of bread, other foods, fertilizers, all that kind of stuff. And in Russia, it's, you name it. I mean, they got everything in Russia. Commodities, oil, I mean, you name it. Russia's pretty much got it. It's massive and so many resources. So once they went into war, and Ukraine got tied up and Russia got tied up, and then there's sanctions and all this stuff. It actually is estimated that global inflation as a whole rose 1.2 to 1.5% just because of the war. Now that's a big freaking deal. That's a massive impact on the global economy. So if they come to peace, you got that. But then on top of that, add what I think Trump's trying to form, an economic alliance with Russia that we've never had before, especially with the connection between Alaska and Russia right there, and doing stuff through the Arctic, which we haven't seen before. So I put together some prognostications with data and some speculation, and this is what's possible if they work this out. So if the Ukraine war ends in 2025 and the U.S. strikes a comprehensive trade and investment agreement with Russia, including full sanction relief, tariff reduction, expanded commodity energy flows, the U.S. economy could capture 0.4 to 0.6% annual GDP boost for several years. That's crazy. That equates to 110 to 170 billion per year, or 500 to 800 billion in cumulative output by 2030. Here comes the upside. Inflation relief. Global energy and commodity prices drop 10 to 30%, saving U.S. households and firms 150 to 200 billion annually. Trade revival. Bilateral trade rebounds from 3.5 billion to 40 to 60 billion, with U.S. exports hitting 15 to 20 billion a year and supporting 75,000 to 100,000 jobs. An investment surge would be that U.S. firms re-enter Russian energy, miner, and infrastructure with 20 to 50 billion FDI over 5 years. This is all estimates, of course, but this is based on if we forge a strong economic impact with Russia, what could come of it based on what's known about Russia and America and how our countries could help each other if we actually pursued this. This is wild stuff. So GDP growth, 0.1 to 0.3% annual growth. Multiplier effects push the total 0.4 to 0.6% extra GDP. This could turn an economy that's kind of limping around at 1.5% to be strong at 2%, or a strong economy at 2.5, 3% into almost a roaring territory of 3.5, 4%. I mean, this is wild stuff. This mirrors a mini stimulus package with new federal spending, or without new federal spending. That's the key right there. This is like, so if we figure this out, it'd be like injecting our economy with jobs and money and cheaper energy. That sounds great to me. I mean, the fact that we've been so tough on Russia even since the Soviet Union fell just makes no sense. And so it makes all the sense. Look at our relationship economically with China. Even though they're stealing our secrets, they're stealing our IP and just abusing us left and right, manipulating their currency. We've kept trade open with them. And yet Russia, we've been hard on, and Russia doesn't offer us the cheap goods China does, but you could make the argument Russia's even better because of what they offer, which is energy. And cheap energy powers the world, makes the world better in every single way. Inflation relief, just by the war, you cut 1 to 2, 1.5% of global inflation. The peace could cut US CPI up to a point in the first year. So we could go immediately from whatever CPI just came out, it's like 3, we could hit 2% immediately just by ending this war. How crazy is that? Inflation could just drastically reduce immediately. And if we trust what true inflation's saying, which is like 1.7%, we could go down to 0.7% inflation based on this. That's wild. Every 1% inflation drop is 120 to 150 billion in household savings. Trade expansion, I talked about that a little bit. Energy. I mean, you could see the energy. Oil could go down 10 to 20 bucks a barrel. Cheaper gas, 25 to 40 cents lower. LNG exports, that means cheaper natural gas, cheaper heating, commodities, metals, tech. I mean, you get it. It's good everywhere. And so we get to the conclusion. It says, in best case scenario, peace plus a trade pact with Russia wouldn't just end a costly war, could act as deflationary shock, trade stimulus, and a supply chain stabilizer. For the U.S., it's not transformational like a $2 trillion stimulus package, but it's a solid, sustained economic kicker that strengthens resilience, lowers costs, and restores competitiveness in key industries. What if a trade route, what if new deals with Russia ends up being our economic miracle? How crazy would that be, guys? I'm just saying, there is so much more going on. It would also end, and by the way, we don't really have any reliance on Europe, but it would end any last need to keep Europe happy about anything. We could treat them like they deserve to be treated, as an ally who hasn't been a very good friend. We could start actually putting them in that place even more so than we already have. I think Russia, once they're done with this, if Trump negotiates this fairly and they agree to the deal, they're going to have no desire to go back to Ukraine because of all the security guarantees for Ukraine. But they're going to have every reason to want to partner with us economically and grow. It will change Russia in a positive way forever. And it will open up a lot of resilience in our economy that we frankly need right now, because this would be real gains, not fake, not inflationary, not federally stimulated. This would be real gains that could change our country going forward in a massive, massive way. And while it says it's not transformational like $2 trillion stimulus package, I actually disagree with that statement, because this would be ongoing. Our kids and grandkids could grow up knowing Russia is a great ally. How crazy is that? It sounds crazy, but guys, we are almost 40 years past the Soviet Union. It's time to move on, and there's no reason we can't all economically gain. So that's huge. Cassink says, Trump telling Putin, let's make money, not bombs. That's right, man. Make love, not war, right? Make money, not bombs. But it makes all the sense in the world, and it would force everybody to take Russia seriously on the world stage again, not as a feared enemy, but as a partner. And guys, that's how world peace is brought around. And this would be destructive to the globalists, because one of their great gains, one of the things they've always been able to gin up war for, funding for, is fighting Russia. If that's gone, by the way, if this deal's made, the next step would be dismantling NATO, which I totally believe Trump would aim for over the next couple of years. So just it could be massive.